Welcome to the Academic Writing Amplified podcast. On this podcast, we believe that the culture of academia needs to change radically. Women and non-binary people are revolutionizing academia within institutions that were not built for us. If you're ready to reject the culture of overwork, kick guilt and overwhelm to the curb, and amplify your voice to make a real impact on your field without breaking down or burning out, you're in the right place. With our team of experienced writing coaches as co-hosts, we'll share insights and talk to inspiring guests to bring you the practical strategies, systems, and mindset shifts you need to find time to write, publish work you love, and design your career on your terms. And it all starts with writing. Let's go. We have a really special treat for you on the podcast today. So you might know from listening to this podcast that we offer a virtual writing retreat, usually at the beginning of the year. This time we did it at the end of January. And this retreat is exclusively for clients who are in our Amplify pre-tenure program or our Elevate post-tenure program, and a few special people who sign up for Navigate during our Thanksgiving week launch. And those are the first 15 people who sign up get the bonus of coming to the retreat. Now, if you've never experienced a virtual writing retreat before, I think you might be surprised by how effective it can be. And I know that if you're like me, you are itching to go on a physical away from your house writing retreat. But, there's so many upsides to a virtual writing retreat that we really had a great time putting on this event. The theme of the event was compassionate accountability. And if you know how I feel about the word accountability, then you might be a little bit surprised. But we really were emphasizing self-compassion, self-appreciation, dealing with rejection. And there was, a lot of this really pouring into yourself kind of parts of our writing retreat this year. So we decided that this workshop that our coach Thea did was too good not to share with the world. So today on the podcast, we have for you Working with Self-Compassion, a presentation delivered by Thea to our very special group of clients at our writing retreat, and now here for all of you podcast listeners. So we hope that you will enjoy hearing the audio from that retreat workshop and really think about how Thea leads us on a journey towards self-compassion.
So after such a fantastic session on executive functioning, this leads perfectly into spending some time working with self-compassion. A few notes just on the materials and resources. Hopefully you're seeing the slideshow now, and that will be available for you in Teachable afterwards by intention, not ahead of time. And when you open it in Teachable and use presentation mode, you'll also be able to see image descriptions for any of the images that I've included with it. And there will also be a handout that, again, intentionally will be shared later. And that will also be available for you in Teachable. So my name is Thea. I'm one of the coaches on the team. And I'm super excited to have this time together because honestly, I could do 3 days of time together just on this subject. So hopefully you're excited and energized by a good break, maybe some sustenance for your body, maybe some of that pleasure that we were invited into and nourishment. So let's take a moment. I invite you just to be present, set aside whatever is going to be distracting to you in the measure you're able to do so. And just take a deep breath with me so we can dig in. Sometimes self-compassion can be as simple as taking that moment to actually breathe and enjoy the nourishment that the breath also brings into our body, into our consciousness, and just stopping for a moment to honor that breath. So anytime that you are feeling like you're kind of scrambling, if you can make yourself remember to stop and breathe, it sounds like super elementary and basic, but we all forget. So it's always good to have the reminder. So I want to dig right in, and I want to start with like some really super shocking facts. Number one, shocking facts by Thea, a new podcast. Just kidding. We are incredibly hard on ourselves. I'm sorry, I warned you it was shocking. Note that I said we, right? So you're not the only one who beats up on yourself regularly. It's a thing. Unfortunately, most of us, if not all of us, do this. And in academia, you're actually part of a culture that encourages you to be hard on yourself. So that's truth number one. Second truth, being hard on ourselves doesn't actually make us better at what we do. Shouting at yourself internally, calling yourself names internally, beating yourself up for something does not make you more productive. It doesn't make your work better. It certainly doesn't make it more joyful. It makes us more tired. It makes us more unhappy. It makes us lose our confidence in our work and in our writing. It contributes to burnout and it steals our joy. But you know what does make it better? Compassion does. Compassion helps. A practice of compassion and of self-compassion makes it easier for us to show up for ourselves and to show up for others. And I am going to bring in some definitions to kind of operationalize exactly what I'm talking about. Well, maybe not exactly, it's not get too precise, but generally what I'm talking about when I reference compassion. And one of the cool things that has seen a shift is that compassion used to be something that you only talked about within like religious or spiritual contexts, but now actually we're having a lot more science to look at kind of the neuroscience of compassion and self-compassion. And so I think that's super exciting. And I think that's anything that brings these practices more, makes them more available to more people is going to be for the betterment of all of our community. One of the things that compassion practices do is they bring back the humanity into our work, into our working lives, into all of our lives. Self-compassion invites you to recognize you're not a machine, right? We tell you you're not a robot, you're not a machine, you're not just this thing that produces research and produces papers or produces knowledge. You are a whole ass human being, a whole entire person, and you are connected to other entire human beings because that's part of being human, is that we are interconnected, interwoven, and interdependent in community. So I have here a quote from the Dalai Lama pictured here with the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu. He says, love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive. So these are our essentials. So let's do another tiny, we took a breath. That was the self-compassion practice. Let's do another quick one. I want you to thank yourself for showing up. You're making time for this retreat. You're investing in yourself. I'm referencing my 3-year-old a lot today. I don't know why, but he does this thing where he talks to himself when he's making like really bad choices and he'll go, self, stop chasing the cat right before I can get to him, theoretically. And sometimes they go back and forth and have like a whole debate. But for this one, just one exchange is good, right? Take a moment. Say it out loud like my baby does, or write it on a sticky note, or shower gratitude on yourself mentally. Thank you. You are showing up for yourself. That is countercultural. It is amazing, and you are a badass. Thank yourself. All right. I thank myself too. So you are going to need for this time a piece of scrap paper. You can't just do it on something digital. I need you to actually have some kind of piece of paper. It can be an old envelope. It can be a sticky note. This is not precious. This is not something you're framing. So find a piece of paper, keep it handy. And while you are finding your little piece of paper, let's talk about compassion, because there's a few things that I think it's helpful to know about compassion. The first thing that I want to point out is that compassion is by definition relational. So we talk about self-compassion, but the very nature and concept of compassion is relational. So compati, to suffer with. It is to locate ourselves within what others are experiencing. And the reason I think this is important to lift up, and we had some conversation around it yesterday too, when we were talking about celebrating ourselves and all of that. In some cultures, we place such a high value on the self and on the individual that we forget that all of this is also relational, right? The what's impacting the one impacts the whole. These networks of relationality are just part of what it means to be human. And especially, again, within the culture of academia, we forget that. That's not how it's set up, right? We're not set up to do the width. We're set up to, raise ourselves up instead of recognizing our common humanity. And Paul Gilbert describes compassion beautifully. He writes that it is a basic kindness with a deep awareness of the suffering of oneself and of other living things, coupled with the wish and the effort to relieve it. Both the wish, that intention, and the effort to relieve it. So if you are practicing self-compassion, you become aware of your own suffering, and you also set that intention to relieve it. And you make an effort to relieve it, because in doing so, you recognize that you are worth that investment, right, of time and effort and energy. It is something good and worth doing. We've been conditioned to believe that if we practice kindness towards ourselves, it would just make us like lazy and self-indulgent and unproductive. But actually, the opposite is true, right? Because self-criticism never actually helps productivity. We might have days where we're a little self-indulgent, and honestly, that's okay. Sometimes you got to have those days to help balance out the grind, and that is perfectly okay. But the entirety of your being is not going to turn into a blob of jelly that doesn't do anything. You are still going to be who you are. You're just going to be kinder about it. Self-judgment is one of those things that actually holds us back. And Kristen Neff writes that, I love this. So I want to sit with this for a minute too. If we hold our self-judgment with gentleness and understanding, instead of getting mad at yourself for judging yourself, you're going to hold self-judgment with gentleness and understanding. The force of self-contempt will eventually fade and wither, deprived of the sustenance needed to survive. We have the power to live with joy and contentment by responding to our suffering with kindness. Now, there are a few things I want to pull out. This reminds me of internet trolls, dealing with internet trolls, right? You don't feed the trolls. That's what it reminds me of. The more you feed your self-judgment, the more it's going to grow, the more space it's going to take up on a forum, the more ridiculous feedback it's going to give. And the word suffering, when we talk about compassion, sounds really lofty, right? Okay, so I had to sit through a faculty meeting. Is that really suffering? Well, was it uncomfortable? Was your humanity in any way made less? As often happens in our meetings, right? Did it stand in the way of what you hope to accomplish? That is still suffering. Okay, so don't limit suffering to absolutely, there is suffering going on in the world in ways that, is large and tragic. And sometimes that can make us think, oh, well, I don't deserve as much compassion, right? Because I'm not living in famine. I'm not fleeing from a war-torn country. I am not being persecuted for my religion or my, tribal membership. So therefore, it's not suffering. But again, when we turn that lens back on ourselves, we also deserve compassion for the things that we are going through, all of which is valid because it's your reality. And another thing that I think is good to remember is that I'm not talking about self-pity. I'm talking about compassion, right? It reminds us that everyone suffers and that we're all human. So this doesn't just apply to the big things. We are all human. That's all it says. Not oh, I'm so sad, I have to feel sorry for myself forever. So I want to talk about self-judgment. And I was laughing when I was getting this together because I got a box of books from my local Buy Nothing group. I have such a good Buy Nothing group. Oh my God. And I was getting this stuff ready and I dug in and I got this book, which is The Decline and Fall of Practically Everybody, Great Figures of History, Hilariously Humbled. I was like, this is so brilliant. This is so fun. What a fun offering from the universe and a free book box, because it's a reminder, these are all great figures, in history. And it tells us how they failed, how they fell flat on their faces, how everyone that we think of as great has their failings and their shortcomings. So it was just that moment of like recognizing common humanity and reminders, right? So to move away from self-criticism and self-judgment, it helps to know exactly what we're talking about. So the prompt on the screen is asking you, what types of things do you typically judge and criticize yourself for? I'm going to invite you to drop in the chat whatever you're willing to share. What are some of those areas that you are just super judgy and mean to yourself about? Not doing enough, procrastination, parenting stuff, speaking up, parenting again, time management, late submissions, food choices, procrastination, all the things, mistakes, not exercising, all of the above. The way I close my eyes on video, Becky, we need to talk. Yes. Prioritizing myself, parenting, speaking in meetings with senior colleagues, not publishing enough, how I eat grapes, not having a permanent job because that's internalized stuff. Yes, all of this. Any others that it feels kind of liberating to get it out there? My English, you just not let yourself eat bananas because of that. Not hitting tenure goals, not being theoretical enough. Oh, Susan will talk too. Insinuation, not cooking all the time. Oh my gosh, if I could tell you how I beat myself up anytime. Feeling guilty about holding boundaries. Yes. Not standing up for myself enough, not do enough housework. Oof, I struggle with that one. Messy desk, I beat myself up for it. Not cooking at all. Catalina, oh, shock, right? Dirty floor syndrome. Not going outside enough. Gina, your face will freeze if you go outside. Don't go outside. Being selfish. Right. So did everybody see something familiar there that you can resonate with? We beat ourselves for things, and it's good to recognize that we're not alone. Because one of the things that shame does is that it tells us that we're the only one. We're the only one struggling with feeling like we can't speak in a certain public setting. We're the only ones struggling with parenting choices. Oh my gosh, not cooking all the time or at all, right? We feel like we're the only ones. And part of compassion is recognizing our shared humanity means that we struggle with many of the same things. Those of us who have disabilities or chronic illnesses struggle with that particularly hard. I live with an invisible chronic illness. So that's part of my reality that I've learned and trained myself out of, right? Some of these things, expecting to be able to do certain things that just, can't do anymore or can't do today, maybe tomorrow. Buying books and not reading them. Let me hide my background now. Yes, so many of us. Now, I asked you to get a piece of paper. So now library fines. Oh, child. So fun story. My 5-year-old daughter, I got when she was 3, I got her first library card. Guess who got a fine? Because mommy didn't take, to be fair, the pandemic shut down the library. But I'm like, oh my God, my daughter's first library fine. What kind of monster am I? Anyway, get your piece of paper because I want us to get a little more specific. I want us to get more personal. And this is something that you don't have to share with others. You're going to choose how you share and to what degree. But I want you on this piece of paper to take a minute and jot down specific things that you are judging yourself over. Something that has a hold over you or stressing you out. Something that you are like ostriching about. Maybe you missed a due date. Or maybe a relationship with a co-writer went sideways and you feel like it was your fault and you feel bad about it. Or a reviewer's comment that totally missed the mark, like they didn't get your work at all or who you are. Or you said something that you felt like, cringy about in a meeting. Be specific and write it down with as much detail as you can. And I'm going to give you a minute to do that. Oh, yes. Next instruction, though. When you are done writing this down with as much specificity as possible, go ahead and turn your camera off because we are going to do a guided meditation. I'm not trying to have anybody feeling self-conscious. So just turn your stuff off. And that way also it gives me a visual cue to know when you've had enough time. So right. Let's do some work after we've been reflecting on all of these things that weigh heavy on us, that are limiting us, that we feel guilty about or shame about. I want us to move into a guided meditation. So I invite you to keep your camera off if that's comfortable for you, just to be present to yourself and to your process. And take a deep breath, and be present. All of the sensations in your body right now. You keep nourishing yourself with the breath. Notice where the feelings are in your body. You were just thinking about something super uncomfortable. Where does that live in your body right now? I invite you to notice without judgment and without criticism. There's no wrong way to experience your feelings, and there's no wrong way to be you. Right now, just notice and breathe. As you notice discomfort or sensation, might just be some tightness, maybe something's not quite where it's supposed to be. You can wiggle that out too. I invite you to direct kindness and self-compassion. And you may want to actually place your hand on your arm, or your hand on your heart, or your cheek. Your camera's off, so don't worry if it looks silly. Doesn't matter. Feel the warmth of self-acceptance, or feel your cold hands. Just give yourself a little bit of love. Just like you would a dear friend who needs a hug, or a child, give yourself that compassion. You can't rush this. You have spent a lot of time beating yourself up about this. So now you deserve this opportunity to give yourself some kindness and some self-compassion. And now I invite you to visualize a place that is safe and welcoming to you. It doesn't have to be a real place. And pay attention to the space. Pay attention to the sights, what's around you, the sounds that you hear, the smells around you. What does it feel like on your skin? Is it warm? Is it cool? Is it soft? Just be present now to this safe space that you are creating. The space is fully accepting and welcoming of who you are. And if this feels silly to you, picture a silly space. That's okay too. There's no judgment here. You don't need to perform. You don't need to posture. And you don't need to impress. So as you breathe, do a really forceful exhalation. Just exhale all of that breath. Almost a sigh, because you are present to yourself right now. And I want you to both mentally and physically take the piece of paper that you wrote earlier and hold it in your hand. And you're going to kind of browse around this place of safety and welcome. And I want you to find a space to discard your list. Is there a cozy fireplace nearby? Is there a shredder? I don't know where you are. Or the depths of the ocean? Is there some rich soil? Find the spot and let your intuition guide you. Now, if you found the spot, I want you to visualize yourself leaving behind the shame and the pain that these things have caused you. Especially if you feel like any of it was due to your actions. It doesn't matter. You're going to leave it behind anyway. You may still need to deal with the thing later, but you don't need to carry the blame and the shame. You're going to leave that here. So visualize yourself doing that, leaving it here. And as you do so, whenever you're ready, I want you to physically rip up your paper as well. Take a deep breath as you do all this and experience your safe place. When you leave this space that is within you, you're leaving behind the things that you've beaten yourself up about. Because you are whole, you are enough, you deserve compassion and kindness. So take this moment to experience yourself without the burdens you've been carrying and just breathe. Share your gratitude with yourself, with this safety that you've been occupying. And whenever you're ready, return to your present moment. And when you feel prepared, I invite you to turn your camera back on.
Thank you so much for spending your valuable time supporting yourself and your writing by listening to this episode. If you like what you heard today, the best way to say thank you is to hop on over to Apple iTunes and write an honest review. The more reviews, the more amazing academic women and non-binary people will find this podcast. So go write one now.